It is midnight in Washington, 6 in London, and 2 on a Wednesday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Moon Conn-young. Let's get a check of the main stories we're following at this hour. Drastic reform for the nation's youth. President Park Geun-hye calls for a comprehensive and fundamental reform package of the nation's job market, education, and social compensation system to boost youth employment and sustainable growth. South Korea and the U.S. note the possibility of potential provocations by North Korea following the rogue state's execution of its second most powerful figure and agree to step up joint efforts to prepare for all possible scenarios associated with North Korea. And rail workers' strike in this country rages on for the 10th day on this Wednesday. Now, although unionized Seoul subway workers call off plans to join in the strike, further disruptions in the nation's delivery system is widely anticipated. We'll have those stories and more, but first let us begin with President Park's comments on the nation's youth employment. Now, President Park called on reforms in the education system and the labor market to tackle the rising youth unemployment rate. During the second meeting of the Presidential Youth Committee Wednesday, President Park said or emphasized the importance of creating a business ecosystem in which young people can be evaluated for their capabilities and competence rather than for their educational background alone. Well, the Korean leader urged college students to give students the skills they need to succeed in today's world and called for early adoption of a system that would allow college students to work and study at the same time. The president also vowed full government support to enhance the country's employment policy. And turning now to the latest on the nationwide rail strike that has entered its 10th day. In the latest development, a union of cargo truck drivers said Wednesday that it will not pick up the freight that's not being delivered because of the railway strike. Shin Se-min has the details.
The railway strike that has affected commuters and businesses nationwide continues to expand. A union of cargo truck drivers, 12,000 strong, said Wednesday it'll not absorb the additional load from the rail cargo that's not being delivered because of the strike. Rail cargo has been the hardest hit by the strike, suffering a service reduction of 50%, while subway services in Seoul have been scaled back by 7%. The Korea Railroad Corporation, or KORAIL, reduced its operations of KTX express trains by 12% on Tuesday. Regular passenger trains are running on restricted schedules with only a 60% service reduction. As the strike enters its 10th day, the Union of Seoul Metro, which operates line subway 1 through 4 in the capital, found common ground with the management hours before planned walkout on Wednesday. Meanwhile, some 900 of the 8,000 striking KORAIL union members have returned to work. Prosecutors are seeking arrest warrants for 18 more union members, in addition to the 10 warrants already issued since the strike started. Striking workers are demanding the government reverse its plans to set up a new railway operator, which they claim is a first step toward privatization. The government and police have characterized it as an illegal strike and say they'll follow the letter of the law in dealing with it. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
And in relation to the prosecutor's charges, nearly 150 union members are being called in by KORAIL in a separate investigation, and we'll have more on this story as it develops. Meanwhile, South Korea and the U.S. are going over all possible scenarios in light of the political upheaval in Pyongyang following the sudden Persian execution of Kim Jong-un's once powerful uncle. ARIRANG News' Kim Hyun-bin reports.
In light of the sudden removal of North Korea's former number 2 man, Chang Song-taek, South Korea and the U.S. held a high-level meeting Tuesday in Washington to formulate responses to all possible scenarios that could emerge in the North. South Korea's Vice Foreign Minister Kim Kyu-hyun and U.S. Deputy Secretary William Burns vowed to enhance joint defense preparations to better prepare for the possibility of North Korea's provocations. They also agreed that the instability in North Korea could encourage the leadership to launch a provocation at some point in the near future to solidify its power base. The South Korean official said Seoul will maintain its current defense status to deter Pyongyang, but stressed that, when necessary, South Korea was ready to take additional measures. Kim also highlighted the Seoul-Washington alliance and Seoul-Tokyo ties as the key factors that ensure peace and stability in Northeast Asia. In terms of diplomacy and security on the Korean peninsula, the two Koreas, U.S., China, Japan, and Russia play key roles and are also the members of the long-stalled six-party talks aimed at denuclearizing North Korea. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
Meanwhile, Korea and the U.S. have yet again failed to finalize how to share the cost of stationing American troops here in Korea. Well, the two sides held another round of negotiations here in Seoul on Tuesday, but the two sides could not reach a compromise on the renewal of the special measure agreement, which is set to expire at the end of this month. Well, reports suggest that the main sticking point was the size of Korea's contribution. Well, Seoul is thought to have offered about $825 million, but Washington wants an amount closer to $950 million. The two sides are also far apart on how clearly the U.S. has to show it spends Seoul's contribution. Now, officials from both sides agreed to resume their negotiations early next month. The U.S. government has shed some light on the character of Kim Jong-un, and their assessment does not bode well for the future of the North or its relations with the rest of the world. Kwon So-ah reports.
Dangerous, unpredictable, and prone to violence. That's the assessment of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's character by the U.S. government based on interviews with people who knew him while he was studying abroad in Switzerland. The assessment was presented by former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs Kurt Campbell in an interview with CNN over the weekend. Campbell said that the U.S. government has gotten a step closer to understanding Kim's character, even though the interviews just reflect what he was like while he was a student.
We went to pains, great pains, to interview and engage with almost everyone, classmates, others, to try to get a sense of what his character was like.
Campbell says the U.S. government's conclusions show the North Korean regime is a threat to everyone, especially after the recent purge and execution of Kim Jong-un's uncle, Jang Song-taek. Campbell said that the international community had some degree of trust in Jang, who was seen as a stable mediator between his nephew and the rest of the world. One of Kim's former classmates thought that he was generally a quiet person, but became very aggressive when he played basketball. Kim's interest in that sport is expected to be in the spotlight again soon, with former NBA star Dennis Rodman scheduled to make his third visit to North Korea tomorrow. But he will not be there in any official capacity. U.S. State Department spokeswoman Mary Harf told reporters in Washington on Tuesday that Rodman is not representing the U.S. and that a travel warning for North Korea is in place for U.S. citizens. Rodman is currently in Beijing and will embark on a 5-day trip to Pyongyang beginning tomorrow. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
And staying with North Korea, under the rule of Kim Jong-un, the North has successfully launched a rocket and conducted a third nuclear test. In the last of our three-part series on Kim's first 2 years in power, we take a look at how far North Korea's nuclear program has come and where it is headed. ARIRANG News Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee has this special report.
Peace, national prosperity, and happiness of the citizens all come with strong nuclear power.
Kim Jong-un has made it clear that North Korea will never give up its nuclear program. And during his 2 years in power, the young leader has taken steps toward making the North a nuclear state.
The first one, the explosion power has increased. At the same time, now they enter into the new step that are focusing on miniaturizing and how to put this warhead into the long-range missiles.
But the significant steps in its nuclear program has taken Pyongyang further away from its closest ally, Beijing, as the North ignored China's warnings and went ahead with a rocket launch last December and a third nuclear test in February. Since then, China has joined in on international sanctions against the North and has steadily increased the economic pressure on its northern neighbor in order to get it to denuclearize and return to dialogue. Experts say Pyongyang's constant belligerent actions have created a pretext for the expansion of U.S. involvement in the region, which is certainly not in Beijing's interest.
For China, the denuclearization of North Korea is important, but so is the maintenance of peace and stability in the North and the Korea, U.S., Japan, East Asia Pacific rebalance policy.
But as much as the North does not want to break its ties with China, a nuclear-free North Korea does not seem an option for now.
There hasn't been a sufficient reduction in the security threats in the region and between the two Koreas for the North to end its nuclear program. So as a result, Pyongyang continues to have difficulty with making the strategic decision to denuclearize.
Beyond that, the communist state constantly proclaims that it was the dying wish of great leader Kim Il-sung and dear leader Kim Jong-il for the North to hold on to its nuclear weapons. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
Well, Japan says it will build up its arsenal of fighter jets to more than 100 amid a growing territorial row with its neighboring countries. NHK reported Wednesday that Tokyo's defense ministry plans to replace roughly 100 planes in its F-15 fighter jet fleet with F-35s, which have stealth capabilities. Well, the move comes as the cabinet on Tuesday agreed to raise its military budget by 5% over the next 5 years. NHK said the plan is designed to allow Japan to demonstrate its military superiority following China's unilateral decision to expand its aerial defense zone while the two countries are embroiled in a dispute over the sovereignty of a group of islands in the East China Sea.
All of the day's important events. Events close to home, around the world.
Second half last, figure out what winners.
The arts and culture scene and the heart of global business.
Experts added that
ARIRANG News has your whole day covered.
the legislature will convene a plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring.
Well, for some of us, we're just getting used to this 4G or LTE idea, but the Korean government has unveiled plans to begin testing the next generation mobile technology, the 5G, in 2018 to solidify its position as a global leader in mobile network services. Our Yudian reports.
Only a fifth of the global population now has access to the latest mobile network technology, 4G LTE. But Korea is already gearing up to introduce the next generation mobile technology, 5G. The Ministry of Science, ICT and Future Planning on Tuesday announced plans to test the 5G network starting in 2018, with the goal of launching the service by 2020. The 5G wireless network will allow mobile phones to transmit data 1,000 times faster than the current 4G LTE. With the breakthrough technology, Korea is aiming to overtake the U.S. and rise to first place in terms of mobile patent competitiveness. Now, Korea already tops the list in terms of revenue growth from its mobile services. Strategy Analytics on Tuesday said Korea saw its mobile revenue grew by the most of 4% during the July to September period, while that of U.S. grew by 3% and Japan by 1%. The market researcher attributed Korea's rapid revenue growth to the increasing number of people switching to 4G mobile phones. Yurian, ARIRANG News.
A new report shows Korea still has a lot of work to do to improve the nation's multiculturalism policies, despite some advances made this year. Well, ruling Saenuri Party lawmaker Jasmine Lee said Wednesday that the government needs to set up an independent organization to manage its policies on multiculturalism, to strengthen support for immigrant wives and to ensure government funds are spent wisely. Well, Lee's performance report was a follow-up on President Park's 10 campaign pledges on multi-ethnic families in society. She said some reforms have been successful, such as measures to help victims of illegal international marriage brokerage firms and a new regulation that allows marriage migrants to acquire Korean nationality in a shorter period of time. Meanwhile, ahead of its announcement Wednesday, the Federal Reserve is debating whether the U.S. economy is strong enough to start scaling back its massive stimulus program. Well, forecasters are divided as to whether the Fed will start tapering its $85 billion per month bond purchases that have kept the U.S. economy above water in recent years. The U.S. economy is showing mixed signals at the moment, lending itself to the uncertainty. The number of people in work grew by more than 400,000 in the October and November period. period, but inflation is running at 1.2% compared to a year ago, which is well below the Fed's 2% annual target range. Some analysts warn that the decision to start tapering too soon could, in fact, lower investor confidence and send markets into a tailspin. However, shares here in Seoul is trading higher on this Wednesday, adding to their recovery from the recent skid led by retailers and chemicals, although caution on the outcome of the Fed's monetary meeting later today limited gains. As of 1:30 p.m. Korea time, the benchmark Kospi was up nearly 0.5% at 1975, gaining support near its 120-day moving average, where the price to book value ratio is an equal 1, attracting bargain hunters. The tech-heavy Kazakh was down by 0.3%, while on the foreign exchange counter, the Korean currency was trading weaker against the greenback at roughly 1,051 won. Well, Korea's movie industry is about to smash yet another record. The number of cinema tickets sold so far this year is forecast to surpass 200 million for the first time ever later this week. Our Connie Lee has the details on how most of this year's biggest draws have been homegrown movies.
From the comedic and romantic to the more dramatic and thrilling. No matter the genre, more Koreans are watching movies these days. So just how many did they watch at the theaters this year?
5개 정도 본 것 같아요.
2014년도에는 영화 2편밖에 안 봤어요.
10편 정도.
1년이면 한 20편, 25편.
According to recent numbers, each person in Korea watched an average of 4 movies at the theaters this year. This figure comes from the Korean Film Council, which says that the number of movie tickets sold so far in 2013 is expected to reach 200 million this week.
The 200 million ticket milestone is very significant because it shows that the Korean movie industry has the potential to expand and grow even more.
And by the end of this year, it'll surpass that number, posting a new record for Korea.
By the end of 2013, we predict that about 210 million tickets will have been sold. Considering Korea's population of 50 million, that's a lot of tickets sold.
And it looks like the Korean films drew in a larger audience. Nearly 60% of the total box office sales went to the homegrown films.
The quality of Korean films has increased incredibly. And not only did we have a lot of good local films this year, we had a lot of unexpectedly successful ones.
And looking at Korea's top 10 movies of this year, 8 of them were domestic, with the highest grossing film being Miracle in cell number 7, which drew in more than 12.8 million viewers.
And looking ahead, experts say that the number of moviegoers will only increase here in Korea, with more people in particular eyeing the domestic films. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
And let's move over to our arts and culture segment with our Lee Tae-ho. And today, in line with Korea setting a new record in terms of movie tickets, it is Movie Day. And so Tae-ho will be bringing us up to date on the latest movie news of the week. Good afternoon to you, Tae-ho.
Good afternoon.
So before we get started with the previews for today, I hear you have some other more animated news for us?
That's right. Now, staying in line with its plan to create a more creative economy, the Korean government is said to have been a major supporter of a movie that is said to be the biggest release of a Korean movie ever in North America.
It is gearing up to be the biggest release of a Korean movie in North America ever. The animated 3D comedy The Nut Job is nearing its release date of January 17th, when it will open in 3,000 theaters across North America. The story follows Surly the squirrel, who must find a way to save the park over the winter with a plan to raid the local nut shop. The production was funded by the Korean government and 2 local banks for a total cost of 45 billion won, or roughly $42.8 million US. The film was directed by Peter Lepeniotis and features the voices of Will Arnett, Brandon Fraser, Liam Neeson, and Katherine Heigl. And interestingly enough, with many Hollywood films premiering here in Korea before they hit screens around the world, The Nut Job will actually be opening in North America before it hits screens here in Korea on January 29th.
Well, you know that I'm an avid fan of animated films, and it's really good to hear that some of the best works of Korea's animated films will be hitting the screens in North America as well.
I definitely agree, because it's so exciting to see these Korean animation companies finally receiving their due and getting some recognition, because they've really been a driving force behind some of the most popular animated television series across the seas, over the seas, excuse me.
I didn't know that, really.
Yeah. If you know the series Simpsons, of course, Family Guy, they were actually all made and produced, or most of it was drawn here in Korea. So they've been a major contributor, and it's kind of less known, I guess.
Right, and I think Korea, definitely the Korean animation market has been quietly gaining some reputation across the globe, and it's for its quality.
And the thing is, the quality of its drawings and animation, it's been top-notch, which is why so many companies send their drawings from over to Korea to have it animated and drawn and then brought back to their country and then aired on TV.
So definitely, we hope to see more of this trend happening in the near future. And of course, was it The Nut Job? Was it it being a hit in North America as well, and it will be released here in Korea as well. Am I correct?
Exactly. It's set to be released in North America on January 17th, which is a little bit sooner than here in Korea, which is set to release on January 29th.
All right, I look forward to that, and I'm sure you have some movie previews as well.
Of course. Now, actor Song Kang-ho is back with his latest film, and also a Korean romantic comedy about a cop and a criminal. Let's take a look.
Actor Song Kang-ho is back. This time he stars in The Attorney with Kim Young-hae and Oh Dal-soo. The film, directed by Yang Woo-seok, follows the story of Song Woo-seok, whose one and only goal as a tax attorney is to make money. That is, until one day he meets the terrorized student activist Chinu, who is unjustly beaten and tortured for his views. Will Woo-seok jeopardize his career and his future to defy an unjust system? Find out in The Attorney, opening in theaters everywhere today. And opening tomorrow on the 19th of December is the Korean romantic comedy Steal My Heart, directed by Lee Hyun-jong and starring Joo-won and Kim Ha-jung. Follow the story of the elite cop Ho-tae, who is on a stakeout for his latest case. But when he learns that the prime suspect is his first true love, old feelings arise and his principles are shaken to the core. Will he follow his heart and go the way of love? Or will he listen to his head and do his sworn duty as an officer of the law? Find out in the film, Steal My Heart.
Right, and of course, not only that, you have the movie box office rankings, right?
Of course, that is correct. Now, today is movie day, so it wouldn't be complete without taking a look at the hottest films here in Korea. So let's go ahead and take a look at the top 5 films here at the Korean box office.
Starting off our top 5 films for the week is the animated feature Cloudy with the Chance of Meatballs 2, directed by Bill Hader and Anna Faris, coming in at number 5. And coming in at number 4 this week is the horror film Insidious Chapter 2, directed by scare specialist James Wan and starring Patrick Wilson and Rose Byrne. Number 3 this week is the British romantic comedy About Time, directed by Richard Curtis and starring Domhnall Gleeson and Rachel McAdams. At number 2 this week is the film Way Back Home, directed by Park Geun-hye and starring Chung Do-yeon and Go-soo. And the top film this week is The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug, directed by Peter Jackson and starring Martin Freeman and Ian McKellen.
Well, you know, The Hobbit, surprisingly, is doing very well, despite the fact that it's only playing in one of the major theater chains here in Korea.
And that's correct. Now, it's only playing here at the Megabox chain of theaters, and Lotte and CGV have both decided not to show this movie, but that shows how popular this Hobbit, or the series of films by Peter Jackson, really is.
All right. Well, thank you so much for today and all the interesting facts that you brought us regarding the movie industry here in Korea. And we'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right.
And over to China, where the government is making an effort to tackle its smog problem. Chinese media on Wednesday said that Beijing will use artificial rain to combat the smog on days when there is heavy pollution. Beijing's Vice Mayor Lin Keqiang said Tuesday that the city will experiment with ways to reduce smog artificially. Now, he did not provide further details, but the city is known to be considering the use of artificial rain and artificial fog removal. Well, Lin's comments follow a directive by the China Meteorological Administration saying that all provincial meteorological bureaus need to find ways to reduce smog through artificial means by 2015. Well, that's all from me at this hour. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and I'll see you back here at 4 p.m. Korea time.